Hello, this is Mara Jane, and you're listening to The Unseen Perspective. Hello, and welcome back to The Unseen Perspective. I am your host, Mara Jane, and today I am back here with Lyra Thompson, who's been on the show before. So, Lyra, how have you been?
I've been pretty good. College life is keeping me busy.
Can you tell us where you go to school and what your major is?
Yeah, so I'm a freshman at Southwest Baptist University, and I'm a media studies major, so like journalism, and then a writing and editing minor.
Fun. My stuff's pretty similar. Um, so today we are going to kind of talk about bonding with people who have other disabilities and how this isn't exactly the same as bonding with other blind people and sharing those direct experiences, but it is similar and it is very helpful and satisfying. So, Lyra, what's your experience been with, bonding with people with other disabilities?
Yeah, so like I hadn't really ever like before college, I had all of my like friends with disabilities were all just like blindness pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And but then coming to college, I now have two friends of mine. One of them is she has dyslexia and like dysgraphia and like orthographia or something, a bunch of like combination of like
Mm-hmm.
language processing disorders. And then I have another friend who has something that I had actually never heard about until she posted something about it, which I'll get into that later as like that's part of the value is like you learn about more disabilities. She has essential tremor, like ET, so like shaking of like the hands and the body and everything. So
That's interesting because I haven't really met anyone, at least at college, who has like any sort of disability. Like, I know I'm
mm,
the only blind person on campus until Mary comes next year, but I haven't met anyone who has like any sort of disability, at least that I know about. Like, they're probably around. I just don't know who's disabled and who's not. Um, but I did have a deaf friend in like elementary school and middle school. So it was kind of interesting to learn about that through her. And also, I've just finished reading Deaf Utopia by Nal DeMarco, who is also deaf. And learning about deafness has kind of been not a rough experience, but just very, very fascinating because it's so different from blindness. Like they're almost opposites, but also
mm.
you're sharing a lot of the same experiences, like being discriminated against or underestimated or being excluded from uh, regular society. Have you read Deaf Utopia or heard of it?
No, no,
It's
I haven't
really
even
good.
heard of it.
I would recommend
I
it.
might have to maybe I'll check it out. But no, like kind of what you were saying with my friend who like has dyslexia and everything, we obviously that's very different because hers is like makes it hard to read and like process language and stuff, which is very different to
Hmm.
mine. But we've both like talked about we both have accommodations like through the disability office at our school. And we've kind of bond related to the fact that other people are like, "Oh, you're so lucky that you get to have that," and we're like, "No, because it's
Yeah.
not putting us on the same level as you."
Hmm.
And but
Yeah.
we also like that means we both like understand the importance of like equal opportunity and stuff.
That's wild that they say you're lucky. I've
Yeah, she
definitely
said that she's
gotten,
gotten that before.
yeah, I've definitely probably gotten that before, but I don't know. Some people say the darndest things.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, like I've met with the Student Access Center, that's like the accessibility people here, and it's been really great, but I kind of feel like it's just like me and them. Like obviously I know there's
Mm.
other people who use those services, but I've never met any of them. So like when I'm in the
Yeah.
testing center, I'll see other people around, but I've never actually like talked to them because obviously I'm not going to walk up to someone in the middle of their test and be like, "Hi, I'm Mara."
Yeah. No, it's interesting. Like you'd think at a smaller school that there wouldn't be as much, but
Hmm.
no, and I don't even remember how I like found out that this girl like had a disability, but I did. And then my other friend, the one that has like essential tremor, she posted like we were friends before, and then she posted something on her Instagram. It was like awareness month for it, or like right before,
Hmm.
like because hers
Interesting.
is very much an invisible disability, and so
Yeah.
I would have no clue until she said something. And then I feel like we've become closer friends after knowing that information because we've like texted about like our experiences and our perspective on like what like how it's not our identity, but it's like a large part of it, and like would we want to cure and things like that. So
Hmm.
similar, like very different experiences that come from it, but still kind of we can relate to the same principles and ideas.
That's really cool. I am going to do an episode. I'm planning to do an episode at some point in the near future about well, I want to explore other disabilities in general, but I also want to explore the connections between blindness and autism. So, like what you were talking about with we experience a lot of the same things, but like in different ways and for different reasons. So, a lot of the characteristics of autism are like blind people have those in common, but for like different reasons and in different
Yeah.
ways. So, I want to talk about like how, you know, people with autism might have a hard time making eye contact for this reason, like a social anxiety, and then blind people just can't like see well enough to do it, or
Yeah.
they don't have enough practice doing it that like it feels
Mhm.
awkward.
Yeah. I had like my family was at a restaurant for like lunch on Easter, and that was just the noisiest, like so many different sounds happening, and there was a light bulb flickering, and I was
Oh
like
no.
sensory mode.
Yeah,
But
I do get very easily overstimulated too.
yeah. But no, back to like my two friends, we've like with disability here, we've talked about like a lot of things, like even like representation is kind of a
Hmm.
thing that so for albinism, there's like not a lot of great representation. It's getting better in recent years, but like only very recent years. And then the other like conditions, like we've talked about my friend with dyslexia and everything, was like it's usually if it's mentioned at all in media, it's just like the joke, like the
Yeah.
throwaway, oh, this person can't read. And then for my other friend, we haven't really talked about representation much, but like I had never even heard of it. So clearly the like it's not represented in media.
Hmm.
So
It is important for like different disabilities to be represented in media, and I think that is a huge issue, and that's always been a huge issue even with like more common disabilities like blindness and deafness. Like they might be there, but they're probably not going to be accurately portrayed.
yeah.
So that's another thing I want to do is like look at different books and movies and see how accurately they portray blind
Mhm.
people.
I got some recommendations for you. I can tell you after.
Oh yes, please do.
But
Um,
um and like another thing that well, just going back to the accessibility or the representation conversation for a second, is there's like on the new Blues Clues, there's like a bunny with albinism, and it's
oh
like
really?
yeah, it's actually so cute because they have like a consultant that's like a girl with albinism who like works in like the industry, and they like had her to like tell them how to do it right. And the little bunny walks with a cane and she has
Ah,
nystagmus, and it's so cute.
that's
And there
so
was an
cool.
episode with like beep base or like beep kickball. I'll send it to you after because it's so
Yes,
cute.
please do.
And it's
That
like
sounds
it's kind of sad.
adorable.
It's great, but it's kind of sad that the best
Hmm.
representation of albinism is a cartoon bunny.
Yeah.
But
Oh well, it's better than
yeah,
nothing.
and I sent her that clip, like one of my friends, and she was like also just so excited about the way that it explained disability without it being like demeaning,
Hmm.
because especially with like dyslexia, dysgraphia, or any sort of like the language processing is that kind of gets like poked fun of, like
Hmm.
poked fun at a lot because it's like just seen as the dumb person who can't read, which is like
Hmm.
obviously not true. So
Right. I do have a question that I just thought of. Um, what do your friends think about people first language and like how
Oh,
people are so delicate about talking about
yeah. I
disabilities.
just had I actually had a conversation with my friend about that the other day. And because I'm like writing an article kind of about this topic too. And so I was like, do you prefer like dyslexic or person with dyslexia? And she's
Hmm.
like, I don't really have a preference. I hadn't really thought about that much. And then for my other friend, there's not really like a term that you would use, like,
Hmm.
because she has essential tremor, but there's not like autistic or some sort of equivalent for that that I
Hmm.
know of. So, and she also is like doesn't really like talk about it as much. Not that she's like not open about it, but she just it's because it's an invisible disability, so
Right.
it's not as obvious to people.
And like we don't go around telling people we're blind.
Yeah, I mean, mine for us it's pretty obvious when we're
Well,
using our
yeah.
canes and stuff. But yeah,
I did get a new cane that has a purple grip.
ooh, I need to get a new cane. Mine's really old. I've had it since like middle school. It's
Oh,
really
that is
worse
old.
for wear, or like high school, early high school, but still.
Mine get bent so quickly and so easily because I like step on them and stuff. I've had to get so many new ones.
I keep replacing my tips because frequently because I have used my cane and in college like over the past 2 semesters so much more than I ever did before.
Hmm. I
But
should use
mm,
mine more, but so I used to just like hang it on my fanny pack that I carried around just so that people would know. But
ah,
then I was like, it's too much to carry around. But I do need to start using it, and it's pretty and purple. So,
another thing we've all like me and my friends with disabilities have bonded over are like jokes because we're all very much like cool with joking about it and like not offending each other because like my my friend with dyslexia, she'll joke about like, oh, I'm contagious whenever I like start messing up my words. And we're both like one time I said something to her and then I like checked in later. I was like, was that too far? And she's like, no, girl, you're good.
hmm,
And
yeah, that's great. I mean, like I love humor in general, so I love being able to joke around with people about that
And
kind of
people
thing.
people get so weird when like
Hmm.
so awkward when I make a joke. Like they laugh extra hard. Like it's
Hmm.
the like,
The people who don't have disabilities,
yeah.
that is wild.
No, I'm gonna if you have any questions, I'm also gonna look through my text conversations with these friends to see like things that we've bonded over.
Okay.
Um, you got any questions?
Well, what do you think about people first language?
Oh, I guess I didn't share my perspective. Um, I generally prefer person first language just because, well, like with blindness, I would say I'm a blind person. I'm not going to say I am a person who is blind because that just feels like really like it feels really formal. And
Hmm.
to me, blind is not like it's just like a general descriptor. It's not really like an identity based thing. But like for
Right.
albinism, I would say I'm a person with albinism. A lot of that's because albino has a lot of like derogatory connotations and
Yeah.
stuff. And so, and same with like I know some people in the albinism community take it and like they take pride in it and call themselves albino, but for me personally, I just generally resort like I default to person with albinism because of the derogatory connotation and like not knowing what people are comfortable with. So,
Hmm. That makes sense. I feel like for me personally, as a writer, I like whatever sounds best, like whatever is grammatically correct. Um, but I hate people going out of their way to say like you said, like a person who is blind. Like that's even more
yeah.
dehumanizing than just like saying a blind person. Like, I don't know.
hmm But oh yeah, I just saw this from like a conversation. I've also had conversations talking about like the differences in our disabilities too, because of course I've talked about the similarities of like accommodations and representation and uh discrimination, which is unfortunately like the biggest thing we all relate to is we've
Mm-hmm.
all faced some sort of discrimination, whether that's just social stigma or like things not being accessible. But like I've also like learned from them and we've talked about our differences. So like my friend with essential tremor, she has said very much how her hers fluctuates day to day. And my vision, while sometimes it might be like if it's super bright or if I'm really tired, is going to be worse, but it's generally pretty stable. But she's talked about how some days it's like really bad and she like hates it, but then other days it's like not even noticeable. And
Hmm.
so, and hers is also like it's gonna get worse as she gets older and her like muscles just get worse with age anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Yeah.
and then also with like our experiences, we've all had different experiences with like when we were growing up and getting diagnosed and stuff. So mine has been I had it I was born with it and was diagnosed at birth.
Mm-hmm.
My friend with tremors didn't have it for the first 15 years of her life and then it just like showed up. Um and then my friend with like dyslexia and everything, she always had it, but didn't know she had it until like middle school. And so
Hmm.
we've had conversations about how for her growing up, that was really rough because she thought that there was just something wrong with her
Mm-hmm.
and that she just couldn't learn to read.
That is
Whereas
interesting.
me, there's pros and cons to both because for me, like I've always known about it and always had it. So I've gotten used to like I've known what it is and how to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
So
I guess we're lucky in that way because we've had our whole lives to kind of like get
yeah.
used to it and learn about it.
And we all have like different, slightly different perspectives on like having a cure, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know if you've done a whole episode about this, or you should maybe, but I my perspective is that like I would not because of like sensory overload. And I
Mm-hmm.
think I mentioned this on our last episode too. I think this came up, but um, one, that would be very sensory overload, and two, it's like a large part of who I am. That's the basic summary.
Mm-hmm.
But then my friend with tremors is kind of a similar perspective to me where it's like part of her identity, like she's accepted that it's like part of who she is and how she was made and uh like because even though hers is like gets worse over time, she still is kind of and some days she says are worse than others where she really doesn't like it, but she generally is like accepting of it. And then I can't remember her exact answer, but my friend with dyslexia said that for parts of it she would want a cure just because it's so like debilitating in terms of not
Mm-hmm.
being able to like read stuff. And I don't know if it was exactly if that's the I'm like not quoting her correctly, like what she said, but I remember her perspective was a little bit different, where she would want a cure for like parts of it.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. I mean, like I wouldn't want to cure either, but also sometimes I'm just like, man, I wish I could just pick up a book and read it, or like
Yeah.
I wish that I could just do this assignment without having to take all these extra steps.
Hmm.
I don't know. I mean, I think being blind is pretty cool. And we talked about that on our episode, like the perks of being blind.
Yeah. And uh we've talked about like I said with like joking, making jokes, we're all like comfortable with joking about it. But I did have like a conversation one time with my friend with tremors that she's like, she generally likes jokes, but it also kind of depends on if she's had a really bad day, like with
Hmm.
like her shaking. Sometimes she's just like not in the mood for jokes and they can like cross a line.
Yeah,
And
that makes sense.
yeah. And so, but we've also talked about how in this is not the same topic, I guess, but uh I'm kind of jumping all over, sorry. But um is with it being invisible versus visible, like my two friends with so like dyslexia and tremors are both those are both very invisible. And mine can be invisible if I'm not using like my cane and stuff. But
Hmm.
so that's kind of an interesting thing where we have similarities. We understand what comes with that. We all still understand having a disability and having like how other people react to that and treat us, but there is still differences because invisible disability, you're not really gonna like people if they don't know, they're not really gonna mm, like have a reaction to it, obviously.
Right. It can be kind of frustrating if they don't know because like then they treat you, they're like I went to a coffee shop the other day and I was trying to order a cream soda and I was like, "What flavors do you have?" Because I couldn't read the menu. And the barista was like, "Oh, just we have all the flavors that are on that sign over there." I was like,
Thanks.
"Okay, what would you recommend?"
Yeah. Um, what was I gonna say? I don't hang on. Gotta reset my brain. Um, oh, is also like we've all kind of bonded over like I mentioned before the stigma. So like for and also like how trivialized certain like it is.
Hmm.
And or, I don't know if that's the best word, but how people will just like be so flippant with their like usage of the word blind. Or they'll be like, "Oh, I'm so blind," and
Yeah.
or like also with dyslexia. I because I brought it up with her one time. Like there was one time where we had like a lunch conversation that we like. I was like, "Let's get lunch and bond over disability," and we were saying so many things, and um we had this conversation, and we were just like one of us would say something of like, "Oh, did you ever have this?" Or, "Oh, what about when this?" And we're like, "Yes, we get it." And we were like high-fiving and being like, "Yeah, you get it." And it was so good. It was so nice because it's like even though it's different, we get it.
Hmm.
And um but we were talking about how during that conversation I was like, "Oh, how do you feel about like are people generally kind of flippant about like, oh, I'm dyslexic, haha, if they like mess up a word?" And she's like, "Yeah, I hate that because they're
Hmm.
not." And so
That
like
is annoying.
just messing up a word doesn't mean that your brain is there's a disconnect between your brain and like your processing of it.
Right.
Or just like having to squint to read something far away or like missing something right in front of you, being like, haha, I'm so blind.
Hmm.
You're not.
Hmm. Yep.
If you can get behind the wheel, you're
Hmm.
good.
I
But
totally
and
agree.
Tremors, we like I'd never really had that. We haven't had that conversation because hers is such like an unknown thing that people
Hmm.
aren't really gonna joke about, like aren't gonna be flippant with it. But she's talked about how she was really like when because she had it, she first got it when she was in high school or like early high school, which is like a really tough time to be going through that.
Right.
And she thought she was really like self-conscious about it early on because people would see her like handshaking or see her or like see her drop things and just think that she was like really nervous
Mhm.
or something like that. And so it's it's like different types of just like stigmas and discrimination, but we all have been there and we all understand what that feeling is like
Yeah, that is nice. I need to find some disabled friends.
more than the ones you already have. Some
Yes,
some
some
different
disabled
ones.
friends that go to K-State.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think um, it is wonderful to be able to find common experiences between yourself and other people, especially when those experiences aren't as common as other experiences, like having a disability.
So like having these friends that I have my sighted friends. I've got like most of my friends are sighted, and then I have my blind friends. But then this like these two friends are kind of like the middle ground where there's like they don't they aren't fully having the same experiences as me, but it's still so valuable to have these
Hmm.
people that understand aspects of like my experiences and I can say something to them about like something that I'm dealing with because of my disability and they I don't need to explain myself as much
Right.
because even if it hasn't been the same experience, they've had a similar experience that they can relate to. And I feel like this kind of bond has like I'm neither of these friends are like super close friends and like we don't see each other as frequently as some of my other friends here at school. But like every time like we interact, it just feels so natural and I've since I only like found my friend that has essential tremor, I only like learned about that this semester, but I feel like I've
Hmm.
gotten so much closer to her just this semester alone because of our discussions about that. Like there's a bond that even if my sighted friends are like I'm closer with them friendship wise, there's still just this like connection that I have with other friends with disabilities that well I'll never have. And then I can also like with our differences though too, like with my blind friends, we typically have similar experiences. Like obviously there's going to be differences, but I'm not learning from them as much. Whereas these friends, like I've learned new types of disabilities and new experiences that other people might go through. And
Hmm.
that's like I think it's really good being part of the disability community in general means like you will understand these types of disabilities and like learning more is always nice because empathy is great.
Yes, empathy is great. But yeah, I do need to get more connected with this the disabled community in general. Like I have connections obviously at the Kansas State School for the Blind and Envision and all that. But I mean, like I said, that's mainly visually impaired people. I haven't really
Mhm.
gotten the opportunity to talk to or interact with people with other disabilities. Um, I think it would be cool if there was like a community of disabled people on the K-State campus, but we don't really have that.
Start a
So
club.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's something I could start. But yeah, thank you for talking to me today. That was a great conversation. And for everyone else, if you liked this episode and if you want to learn more about blindness and other disabilities, please tune into my podcast on Spotify or YouTube and follow us on Instagram at the Unseen Perspective 2024. And if you have feedback for us or episode ideas, please DM us on Instagram or you can email me at the unseen perspective 2024 at gmail.com. And we would appreciate if you would follow and subscribe. And if you want another podcast that teaches about blindness, there is the Kansas State School for the Blind podcast, Discover Podcasting at KSSB. And then, Lyra, do you have any podcast recommendations?
Um, well, I have one that I mentioned on the last episode, but I might rep it again. It's called Rare with Flair. It's two girls with albinism. And I can like send you the link if you want to put it in your description, maybe.
Okay, yeah, that would
And
be
then
great.
also just another shout out, not a podcast, but if your listeners want to support a disability owned business, my one of my friends has an art business and she just like started because she's a senior like art student, so um her business is Neverland Studios. So neverlandstudios.org. I believe it's .org. Yeah. And then on Instagram at BH underscore Neverland Studios. And so supporting disability, yeah. And she's really talented too, even if it, regardless of the fact that she has a disability, she makes some really good art.
Nice. I'll have to check that
So
out too.
yeah.
Um, well, thank you everybody for tuning in, and I hope you have a great day. But until next week, bye.
Bye.